The Halloween season is officially here, and every October, I like to get into the spooky spirit by completing my annual movie challenge, the 31 Days of Halloween. This year, I've created a lineup that covers the full spectrum of spooky, featuring horror classics we've seen 1,000 times, forgotten gems that have been lost to time, and some newer, underrated films that definitely deserve the spotlight. But Halloween isn't just about the scares and the screams, which is why I've also added in a healthy mix of Halloween-themed family films. Because the ultimate goal of this challenge is to really get into the spooky spirit, and what better way to do that than with some nostalgic fun? And I wanted to make it even easier for everyone to follow along this year, which is why every movie on this list is available on a streaming service, so you can easily join in on this spooky movie marathon. But that being said, my first pick isn't actually a movie, because every October 1st is my annual rewatch of Over the Garden Wall. It was Cartoon Network's first ever miniseries, running about the same length as a movie. It follows Elijah Wood as Wirt, who along with his little brother Gregory get lost in the woods and encounter a myriad of creepy characters and cryptids. Heavily inspired by Grimm Brothers fairy tales, this short autumnal adventure is the perfect way to kick off the month. But I don't want to keep the horror fans waiting for too long. That's why on October 2nd, we're coming right out of the gate with a doozy, and that's David Cronenberg's The Fly. Often regarded as one of the greatest body horror films of all time, it stars Jeff Goldblum as a scientist who has a breakthrough and invents a teleportation device. But after he volunteers himself to test out the experiment, things go horribly wrong, all thanks to a common housefly. But a film this intense might require a bit of a palate cleanser, which is why on October 3rd, we'll be revisiting the wholesome Halloween classic, It's the Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. A Peanut special is basically a cheat code for getting into the spirit of any holiday, but there's something truly special and comforting about the Great Pumpkin. Continuing with seasonal tone setters, on October 4th, we'll be watching the original Scream from 1996. A film that works so well by revamping the slasher genre, adding a meta twist with some elements of whodunit murder mystery. But campy scares may not give horror junkies the fix that they're itching for, which is why on October 5th, I chose 1974's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This will actually be my first time watching this film, and I'm really excited to check out this Tobe Hooper classic. On October 6th, we're bringing it back around to a family-friendly Halloween staple, and that's Hocus Pocus. It's a film that I never really watched much growing up, so I don't feel a strong nostalgic connection to it, but it never fails to get me into the Halloween spirit. My pick for October 7th is a bit less Halloween-y, but it is just as goofy and spooky, and that's 1977's House, a Japanese film whose essence is impossible to describe. It feels like watching an episode of Scooby-Doo on an acid trip, and even that doesn't do it justice. Just ask Bill Hader.
Yes, this is a crazy f***ing movie. This is how much I like that movie.
October 8th and October 9th will feature one of the most beloved horror films of all time, followed by its recent sequel, and that is of course The Shining and Dr. Sleep, both of which are based on novels by Stephen King that feature the Torrance family and their haunting endeavors at the Overlook Hotel. Dr. Sleep, which follows Ewan McGregor as a grown-up Danny Torrance, is a film that I've actually yet to see for myself. But given that it's the 5-year anniversary of the film's release, and writer-director Mike Flanagan's newest film, The Life of Chuck, just won the People's Choice Award at TIFF, I figured now would be the perfect time to check it out. Speaking of new releases, the next Wallace and Gromit film, Vengeance Most Foul, releases later this year, which is why my pick for October 10th is Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. Winner of the Oscar for Best Animated Feature in 2006, this is an 85-minute triumph of claymation animation that is both an award-winning masterpiece and a perfect contender for spooky season. Heading into the weekend, October 11th through 13th are going to feature varying degrees of festive films, starting with Candyman on Friday, Donnie Darko on Saturday, and Kiki's Delivery Service on Sunday. And while this will be my first time watching the hook-handed horrors of Candyman, it'll be far from my first time watching Donnie Darko, a bizarre sci-fi psychological thriller whose story culminates on Halloween night. And although Howl's Moving Castle is a personal favorite of mine, there's something truly magical about Studio Ghibli's coming-of-age classic, Kiki's Delivery Service. Hayao Miyazaki's tale tale of a young witch and her talking cat Gigi provides a more wistful and comforting vibe to our month of madness. But a section of horror we've yet to explore yet are zombies, which is why my picks for the 14th and the 15th are George Romero's Night of the Living Dead and Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Night of the Living Dead is a pioneer of zombie cinema, and it went on to influence so many films that came after it. And while Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island may feel like a silly choice to co-star along one of the greats, it's actually one of the most acclaimed in the Scooby-Doo franchise. It's also unique in that for the first time, the gang is facing off against a real supernatural being. October 16th and 17th, we'll be following the same pattern by picking two similar movies with vastly different tones, but this time in the alien invasion genre. And that's John Carpenter's The Thing, followed by Killer Clowns from Outer Space. The Thing is one of my favorite movies of all time because it perfectly balances so much of what I love, like murder mystery, riveting practical effects, and Kurt Russell wearing a really big hat. Killer Clowns from Outer Space, on the other hand, is a campy and creepy cult classic that is a cornerstone of 80s horror comedy. October 18th brings us back to the modern age again with James Wan's most recent horror flick, Malignant. Best known for pioneering some horror franchises like Saw, Insidious, and The Conjuring, Malignant seems to be the black sheep of the bunch. It's garnered much praise and critical acclaim since its release, but it never seems to be talked about as much. It's also something that I want to watch before his remake of Creature from the Black Lagoon releases, which is a film I initially planned on adding to this list before I realized that another much older horror classic is getting a remake a lot sooner, and that's 1922's Nosferatu. Originally created as a knockoff of Dracula, Nosferatu became one of the most foundational horror films in cinema history. And with Nosferatu on Saturday the 19th, we're transitioning to another vampire film on Sunday the 20th, officially making this a vampire weekend. And while there are hundreds of quality vampire films I could have picked for this spot, I decided to go with one that almost seems to have been forgotten by time, and that's 1985's Fright Night. Directed by Tom Holland, sorry, the other Tom Holland, Fright Night follows a high school student who discovers that his neighbor is actually a vampire. But after desperate pleas with his family and the police, no one seems to believe him, just kind of brushing it off as a crazy conspiracy. Everyone except, of course, his neighbor. But 80s horror can vastly vary in tone, which is why on October 21st, we're turning up the heat with a film that's been described as one of the most sadistic and twisted movies ever made, and that's 1981's Possession. A film that observes the increasingly peculiar and disturbing behavior exhibited by a woman after she asks her husband, an international spy, for a divorce. We'll be dialing it back a bit on October 22nd, but still maintaining a haunting aura as we look to Guillermo del Toro's Crimson Peak. This Victorian-era Gothic romance was intended to feel like a throwback to a different era of haunted house movies by using an older style of filmmaking. But now let's take a look at a Halloween favorite of mine, and I mean an actual Halloween movie. Because my pick for October 23rd is my favorite movie in the Halloween franchise, and that's Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. It's the only film in the Halloween franchise that doesn't feature the character of Michael Myers, an aspect that was met with a lot of criticism by fans around the time of its release. The original plans for the Halloween franchise aimed to see it turned into an anthology series, with the next installment being a ghost story. But after the backlash, these plans were scrapped, and thus Halloween 4: The Return of Michael Myers came to be. But separating this film from the now long-running Michael Myers series, it's truly an incredible movie. A sci-fi corporate conspiracy thriller was not at all what I expected, but it's something I really adore. And while the movie for October 24th may look even older than Season of the Witch, it's actually a modern take on the genre, and that's 2016's The Love Witch, which follows the story of a witch who uses magic to make men fall in love with her, which is obviously not met without consequence. This is a gorgeous film that pays homage to campy Technicolor films of the 1960s. We'll be ending this particularly witchy week on October 27th with a film that I have been dying to watch for years, and that's Dario Argento's Suspiria from 1977. The film follows an American student who transfers to a German ballet academy, but begins to suspect something more wicked is going on behind the scenes. Shifting back to some creature features now for the final weekend of the month, on October 26th, we'll be watching The Wolfman. It may not be as popular as some other Universal monster movies like Dracula or Frankenstein, but it's still one of the most acclaimed. The remake is slated slated to release in January of next year, so now is the perfect time to revisit it. But finishing off this Werewolf weekend on the 27th with a film that's often praised for its impressive practical effects, and that's 1981's An American Werewolf in London. This is a project that writer and director John Landis had actually been working on since 1969, but he couldn't get the studios to back it until he delivered them some other comedy classics like Animal House and The Blues Brothers. And while John Landis would go on to direct even bigger comedies like Trading Places and Coming to America, it was his work on this film that led him to direct one of the most famous music videos of all time, Michael Jackson's Thriller. And before we go full force into the Halloween spirit these last few days, I wanted to take one last detour to revisit one of the greatest ghost stories of all time, which is why my pick for October 28th is M. Night Shyamalan's The Sixth Sense. An eerie autumnal setting creates the perfect atmosphere for the story of tragedy and redemption. It was the film that launched M. Night Shyamalan's career and made his name synonymous with plot twists. As I said at the beginning of the video, the most important aspect of this challenge is to watch movies that really get you into the Halloween spirit, and that's especially true for the final few days of October, which is why for October 29th, I'm going with Halloween Town, and for October 30th, I'm going with The Nightmare Before Christmas. These Disney films have become Halloween staples for a reason. They're the perfect amount of Halloween whimsy, magic, and fun to get you excited for the big day. And yes, The Nightmare Before Christmas is a Halloween movie, not a Christmas movie. I don't care what you say. Which brings us to the grand finale of our 31 Days of Halloween challenge, October 31st. And like I'm sure many of you have already guessed, the final movie of our Halloween movie challenge obviously had to be Hotel Transylvania 3 Summer Vacation. No, I'm kidding, it's Halloween. It's the ultimate Halloween movie. This film has truly earned its title, and it spawned what is arguably the most iconic horror villain of all time. And if you're looking for some bonus content to watch on Halloween, you could just turn this into a binge of the entire Halloween franchise. Now, as I clarified earlier, all of these movies are available to watch on at least one streaming service as of this recording. But sometimes during these Halloween marathons, a film will be unexpectedly dropped from a streaming service in the middle of the month. And if that's the case, I will update the list accordingly. So if you want to be aware of any of these changes, you can follow me on Letterboxd, where you can see the full version of the list as well as read my reviews for each day throughout the month. I'll also be posting any potential changes on my Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, so make sure to follow me on there as well. And all of these links are in the description of the video. But thank you so much for watching. If you do decide to follow along with this challenge, feel free to let me know how it's going. Be sure to subscribe and comment what movies you're looking forward to the most, and happy Halloween!